Hello, and welcome to Module 2 of the Cultural Competence with Disability Learning Series, Challenging Assumptions and Communicating Respect.
By the end of this module, you will be able to challenge your and others' assumptions about disability and communicate respectfully with and about people with disabilities. To begin, we'll share some real quotes from people with disabilities as they have reflected on and responded to misconceptions or assumptions people made about them. As the quotes are presented, think about whether you've had similar experiences or made similar assumptions in the past.
Just because I don't communicate the way you used to doesn't mean I don't have anything to say.
Please don't talk to me like a 3-year-old. I don't like when people do that.
I'm not one of those people. I am one of all of us.
I am a person, so don't treat me like I'm invisible.
Having a disability doesn't mean I'm unintelligent.
Not being included makes me feel more disabled than I really am.
We all make judgments or assumptions, whether they are fair or not. Respect begins when we overcome misconceptions, avoid assumptions, and focus on the whole person.
People with disabilities are just people. Sometimes they do inspirational things, and sometimes they make mistakes. Mostly, they do everyday things like everybody else.
Once when I was in the store buying a bra, an everyday thing that all women do, a lady came up to me and said I was inspirational. And I said, "What, for buying a bra? No, buying a bra isn't inspirational, but maybe scuba diving in a wheelchair is."
Avoiding assumptions is also a key strategy of respectful communication. The words we choose matter because they convey our underlying perceptions.
To avoid assumptions in our speech and communicate respectfully with and about people with disabilities, we can start by saying what we know. For example, say that a person has cerebral palsy, not that he, she, or they suffers from, is afflicted by, or even overcomes cerebral palsy. Even if you think you're saying something positive, it carries an assumption about the person's experience. As another example, say that a person uses a wheelchair, not that they are confined to a wheelchair.
My power wheelchair is really cool. I'm not stuck in it. Actually, it's my freedom because it's how I get around.
Put the person first. Rather than saying a disabled person, say a person with a disability. That's called person-first language.
You may also have heard of identity-first language. That is, some people prefer to show pride in their disabilities by putting the disability first, as in an autistic person or a deaf person. It's probably best to start with person-first language until you know someone well enough to know their preferences. If you're not sure, ask.
Finally, emphasize strengths. Focus on what a person can do, not what they can't.
For example, instead of saying, "John can't talk," say, "John uses a communication device to speak," or "John communicates non-verbally."
Okay, now let's try a brief exercise so you can practice what you've learned.
Take a look at these quotes from the news media about the passing of renowned scientist Stephen Hawking. The first quote says, "The illness left him in a wheelchair and largely unable to speak." Using what you've learned in this module, can you identify the assumptions this quote makes about the person's limitations? How would you change the language to be more respectful and strengths-based? Perhaps you would say, "Dr. Hawking used a wheelchair to get around and computer-assisted speech to communicate." Now try this quote. "He accomplished all this while suffering from ALS." What would you change? Perhaps you would simply say, "He accomplished all this." If it seemed important to mention his disability, you might say, "He accomplished all this. Dr. Hawking also had ALS."
Mark Twain said, "The difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and the lightning bug." Our language evolves, and we're getting better at speaking with each other in respectful ways. This means you might not always be sure which word to use. It's okay to ask. And we all make mistakes. If you say lightning when you meant lightning bug, apologize and try to do better next time. Respectful language isn't about memorizing a list of rules. It's about listening, being open, and avoiding assumptions.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to contact the New Hampshire Disability and Public Health Project if you have questions or feedback on this or any of the training modules. We'd love to hear from you.